So hackers can just go to that file and boom, there it is, right there.
It's not necessarily that they're trying to get into your site, it's that they're trying to get into all sites, and they're doing it very quickly.
Just own the fact that, you had one as your password and you got hacked.
We don't actually have just 60,000 plugins, right? We have 60,000 plugins times however many versions of those plugins exist in the wild. Welcome to Impressive Hosting, a podcast about the role hosting plays in shaping the open web. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman. On this show, we go deeper than uptime and dashboards. We talk about hosting as infrastructure, about ownership, independence, and what it takes to build ethical, high-end WordPress hosting that actually serves creators, businesses, and the internet itself. Before we dive in, head to impressive.host. That's where you can comment on episodes, ask follow-up questions, and help shape future conversations. You'll also find links to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you listen. Today, I'm very happy to say that we have Tom Raef from We Watch Your Website on the show. Tom's here to talk to us about AI, security, and what it takes to keep the open web safe. Tom, thanks so much for joining. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I started doing website security back in 2007, and I had become a member of a organization called badwarebusters.org. It was started by Max Weinstein, who's now with Sophos, the antivirus company. And I believe it was tied with Harvard and possibly Google. But anyway, it was an open forum. People could post like security issues. Their website had been hacked or whatever. And it could be anything, WordPress, Joomla, any platform. And they would ask questions on there and ask for advice on how to find the malware and remove it and possibly why it happened. And so I just loved it because it gave me an opportunity to learn a lot. And I just kept at it. Eventually became one of the top contributors there. Daniel Sid, one of the founders of Securi, was also one of the top members there too. And so we would just, do whatever you could, help people out. Now, rarely did you get access to their site. You just had to try and help them. And, they would ask questions and so forth. So anyway, from there, started blogging a lot about the infections that we were finding. And one day I get a call from a guy, and he says, my boss's website just got hit by what you posted about yesterday. And so we talked for about an hour and a half. He calls me back the next day. He goes, hey, the information was spot on. He's like, I see you host with us. I'm like, who are you? He's like, I'm Alex Lundquist. I'm a level 3 here with Bluehost. My boss is Matt Heaton, the owner of Bluehost. How'd you like if we started sending you some business? I was like, oh, okay. So, and yeah, they were saying, like, they would tell all their terms of service people and all their tech support people, anybody calls in with malware issues, just send them to WeWatch. And so, that helped launch us, to nth degree, but I also had to automate things. And I'm a programmer from way back. And,
that does go back to the early days of Bluehost.
yeah,
that's a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. They had one guy in terms of service, Richie Jackson. And, Richie and I became very good friends. And in fact, he invited me to his wedding. But so at any rate, we got, super busy. And like I said, I'm a programmer from way back. I started programming on IBM punch cards way. So anyway, I had to automate, processes because we were getting so much business. And then Bluehost bought Just Host. And we were also doing stuff with Host Monster and, a bunch of them. And, word spread. So yeah, we had to automate things. And, so we kept going, but I always wanted to know how each website was infected. It's just one of those things. When I was a kid, I had to understand how a lawnmower worked. So I took it apart. Couldn't put it back together, but I took it apart and tried to figure it out, the whole combustion engine thing. But, so that helped me a lot to understand what we needed to do. So we added log file monitoring. Um, we added, search scanning databases. As the hackers got progressively better and better at their craft, we had to keep up. So um, it became really good with htaccess and php.ini files. So
Right.
back in the day. Um,
And so over that time, you've actually secured millions of sites, right?
yes, yeah, we've removed malware from over 8 million websites since 2007. We actively monitor. It's it. I have to change our stuff because it says over 2 million, but we're a little over 3 million websites that we actively monitor now. And that's, like I said, streaming the access logs live, um, scanning the database changes, and any file changes. So we see stuff happening as it's happening.
Yeah.
So, but that
That's
also
interesting.
gives
Yeah.
us, but
No, no, go for it. Keep going.
that gives us the insight we need to tell people, okay, um, this this user account on your WordPress site called developer, it was used here, from this location, say San Francisco, at this time, and then 2 hours later, somebody used that same account from Eastern Europe, and they were already authenticated, so we know for sure that it was a stolen session cookie. You kind of develop this um, uh, way of thinking about how hackers work. And we've seen instances where hackers actually log in, like tunnel in from the developer's desktop computer, and infect a site while the developer's logged in doing actual work. I mean, it's crazy. So, but so yeah, and then obviously over the past year or so, as AI has grown, and we see more of it, being used by hackers, we had to grow with that. So, um, less of our stuff in the early days, I had to learn regular expressions. And we use those for identifying malware. But as things progressed, you can't have a signature for every piece of malware. It's just impossible. So we adopted machine learning and AI, and that's core to our business now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's actually how you and I connected. And I want to circle back to AI and some of the things that you're working on, especially around the way in which you're trying to help out with the WordPress community as a whole. But before we dive into that, you had mentioned that, you were the type of kid who had to figure out how the lawnmower works. I'm sure your toaster probably got taken apart a few times. Uh, when you think about this, and you talk to someone who's maybe a little bit less experienced, um, and the reason I ask is because we may not necessarily have that type of audience member on this podcast, but hosting companies and agencies are listening, and they're often building for novice users. And I think that those companies have a responsibility to make sure that they're securing those sites, but at the same time, they have to balance that against not making WordPress look overly complex, making it look like it's actually insecure, things like that. So I think sometimes they end up taking some security measures, um, and trying to automate it, which is great. I think that's good. But also sometimes I think they try not to like over educate, uh, in a situation where they might be a little bit more fearful. But like if you were to tell a hosting company what are the two or three most vulnerable areas once a user starts using a website, what is it that they should be looking out for? What is it that they should be watching for?
Well, it's a great question. Um, Too many times, I see on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and various groups, people say they just start throwing out numbers. They're like 80% of WordPress websites are infected due to outdated plugins or null plugins. Everybody likes to throw out that term, null plugins. Um, but our data, like I said, I'm a data guy. Our data shows that like a little over 65% of websites are actually infected due to stolen user credentials.
Right.
it and it's a part of security that um, very few people think about. And I talked to one guy, he's over in England, and I talked to him about our report that we came out with a couple of years ago, I think it was 2024, about info stealers and stolen, authentication cookies. And he just bluntly told me, he's like, yeah, he says, I'm not going to help you promote this. I was like, why not? You don't believe my numbers? And he's like, no, no, no. But there's nothing I can do to prevent it. So why would I promote your data if I don't have a solution for it? I'm like, okay. So yeah, getting back to your
I mean, I
question.
guess I would argue that making people aware of the problem is probably the first step towards solving it.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
and just for clarity, you saying the 65% are from stolen credentials. Does that include brute force incursions and other things, or are you saying strictly that it's people have actually either through like social ways or getting into your inbox and your email, things like that, they're actually stealing the username and password?
They're actually stealing the username and password. Um,
Okay.
and in fact, I just posted on LinkedIn that we're seeing. Rarely do we, because we're watching the access logs, so we see when somebody's trying to log in. We see these brute force attacks, um, and we just saw one a couple of weeks ago. We reported to the VPS provider. Again, I won't name names. I don't like doing that. Um, One website over a 24-hour period had over 400,000 brute force attacks from one IP address to one website. I mean, that's you're trying really
That's
hard.
a red flag, right?
Yeah, but I also think, and we report those to the VPS providers, by the way. Um, but we're also seeing where the hackers try that, and then like there's a break in the action, and then they just log in. So you could think, okay, well, they finally found the password, but no,
Yeah.
because a number of these, like we get a chance we deal with a lot of small hosting providers, agencies, and so forth. But eventually we get a chance to talk to people that own the website and like, tell me about your password. And they're like, no, and with some of these recent ones, it actually, as the admins log in, it actually stores the username and plain text admin password in a file on the website that's in the
Oh,
WP
geez.
content folder. So hackers can just go to that file and boom, there it is, right there, plain
Yeah.
text.
Right.
So anyway, so we get
Right.
to see them, and it's a very good password. 10, 12 characters, uppercase, lowercase, the whole thing that everybody recommends. But yet it was used to infect that website. So you're like, how, you know, how does that happen? It wasn't a brute force, but so it's like they're trying to mask their attack with, we're just going to, make this guy assume that, or, make these people assume that, we finally found out what the password was. No, no, come on. You don't have that in your dictionary. I guarantee it. Um,
Right.
so I think they're just trying to mask things. So, but the big thing,
Oh, that's interesting. So this is like in an effort to be kind of aloof or covert around the way in which they're getting in. They start with a brute force attack just to kind of cover their tracks there.
right? Um,
Interesting.
but the big thing I would tell hosting providers is they have to educate the website owners on local device hygiene. I don't know what it's. You got
Yeah.
to have got to have a local antivirus, and
Right.
nothing against. I don't have anything against anybody, unless you're a Detroit Red Wings fan. But only kidding. Mac users have been told for years, and they still believe it. I don't need an antivirus
Right.
because I'm on a Mac. That's why I bought a Mac because
Yep.
it's secure. But no, I mean, Macs are getting hacked all the time. Uh, so they have to educate the website owner, and all admins must have a good anti malware program running on their local device. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they have to run full system scans because, once you understand how antivirus programs work, they get updates all the time. Well, if you get a virus after the last update, then it's not going to see that virus until you scan it again. Anyway, so the local device hygiene is critical. Obviously, keeping plugins and WordPress core up to date, is critical. Um, it enforce the fact that people need to uh, maintain a minimum list of admins on their WordPress site. Uh,
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yep.
we just cleaned up a bunch where the developer on he's got 14 servers, average of about 28 sites per server, and they were just getting annihilated with this recent infection with the plain text username and passwords in a file. And as a developer that they haven't used in over a year, that's the account that was compromised. Come on,
Right.
you,
I mean,
you
I've
gotta
seen
own
it
it.
100 times. Yeah, actually, I can remember times where I used to help out with the local WordPress meetup here in Rhode Island, and I'd ask someone to add me to their account or something like that, so I could help them out. And the reason I asked them to add me was because they actually just wanted to give me their username and password, and I was like, no, 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 please don't do that, Uh, and so they make me a user, and then I would realize that months go by, a year or two go by, and I'm still an admin on their site. And
Right,
luckily I'm a good guy. I have no intention to do anything with it, but at the same time, it's like you got to be aware of who's on your site. And I think that people don't necessarily understand that. They don't necessarily. I mean, we talk about this on this podcast a lot, that the barrier of entry to building a WordPress website has only gone down over the years. So you need less technical experience every year to be able to run a WordPress website.
mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that means that you may not have taken a class on good password hygiene. You may not have taken a class on how to secure your own personal computer. Half the time, I mean, you're talking about people not necessarily remembering to take people off as admins, but half the time people don't even know why they would even be at risk of having a website hacked. They don't
Right,
understand. I'm running a small blog. Why would anybody want to hack my site? Well, the reality of the situation is, and we say this all the time, is that they're not necessarily always trying to get into it's not personal. It's not
right.
necessarily that they're trying to get into your site. It's that they're trying to get into all sites, and they're doing
Yep.
it very quickly. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing too is that people don't necessarily recognize, and I think this is something where the WordPress community could actually, either the WordPress community or hosting companies could do a better job of this, but we have services out there that identify when your username and password have been stolen off of another website, like I've been pwned, for example.
Right,
And people don't necessarily recognize this, but if you're using the same username and password for your WordPress website or your Gmail account that you're using for, some streaming service or some random website somewhere else, and that website gets hacked, they'll take those usernames and passwords, they'll sell them, and then they'll just try those on any service out there, whether it's a WordPress website or whatever. So if they can identify, which you can, that your email exists on a WordPress instance, then they can also just go out and see all the passwords that have been revealed from your previous accounts and just keep
yep,
trying those.
right,
And so I think in the past, we worked very hard, at least, in my past in working on the UX of security for websites. Um, I've worked very hard to try and teach people to create strong passwords. Now it feels like the messaging has changed to make sure you're using a different password for everything. Don't email people usernames and passwords. Like we have a service at Automatic that came over when we were working on Brew Protect and we joined Automatic. We had something called Quick Forget, which is a really nice little service. It's basically you can drop anything into it and it creates a URL, shares that information, and then it kind of has like a Mission Impossible style self-destruction that after X number of views that you've determined, it gets wiped out and is gone forever. And people think about, well, why is that important? Well, think about it this way: if you actually do need to send credentials to somebody, if you're doing that via email, then that lives in your inbox and their inbox for the rest of time until you actually delete it, which
right,
most people don't. So if I get access to your inbox, I can actually see everything that's ever been passed as long as. But if they see a quick forget URL, they'll click it and it's gone.
That's
It's gone
good.
forever.
Right.
So, things like that I think are really helpful. And I think that, when we think about the responsibility that hosting companies have to this, I think they can be doing a better job of informing the customer. Um, I think we're all a little bit guilty of this because, again, we don't, want to impose fear. We don't want the customer to feel like it's scary. Because I don't think that
Right.
fear works in this way. I think it just kind of drives them away. But at the same time, helping them to feel a bit more secure, I think, is a really good thing. Which actually leads me to my next question. When we talk about agencies, a lot of times I talk to agencies who provide a service, even a management service for an end customer, a client, but they don't necessarily pay for all these features for these customers. A lot of times, what agencies do is they'll provide their services, but the hosting, additional security tools, emails, things like that, all get charged to the end client directly. And then a lot of times the agency's left trying to explain to these customers why they should be buying security products, why they should be doing certain things. So, I'll ask you the kind of the same question about hosts, but to agencies, like how would you advise an agent or an agency to make sure that they're helping their customers to stay secure, and if they have a very uh, cautious customer, how do they address that?
That's a good question as well. It's kind of a double-edged sword because since, like I said, 2007, um, people, when they found out that we were working with Bluehost, they actually would accuse Bluehost of hacking their website so that they could sell them our service, and then we would kick back money to Bluehost. I mean, like, come on, just own the fact that you know you had one as your password and you got hacked. I mean, come on. But um, so it's always been a struggle there because it's years ago before I got into computers, I was selling copiers, and people would always say, copiers are one of those things that you can't glamorize it when you sell it. You just people have the need and they recognize the need, they buy it. And it's kind of that way with website security too. But what they can also do is they can ask the customer, okay, we we do everything possible from our end to try and keep your site safe. But if your site gets infected and it's displaying, you know, pharmaceuticals or, redirecting people to this or that, or it's trying to do a drive-by download on your visitors' websites, you know, what would that cost you in downtime, in reputation management, and so forth, versus what, proactive security is going to cost you? And, just, to be honest with you, you just have to, lay it out to them just like that, let them make the decision. But, typically most of our clients are ones they've already been infected. And, it, but like I said, if they have a server and, one of the sites on the server gets infected, they're just like, yeah, just sign my whole server up for your service, just cover them all. Um, so that's, and you can, hosting providers and agencies can talk to their customers about, that's typically the way it happens. But, at that point, then you're in a scramble to clean the website, fix it, patch it, and get it back. But then you still have the reputation management to deal with. So, yeah, the
Yeah.
reputation management and downtime are the two biggest, um, you know,
I think you're
points.
100% right on the reputation management. One of the things that I talk about all the time with you had mentioned previously, like having an activity log or other types of logs. Jetpack, the plugin made by Automatic here, Jetpack has an activity log that identifies exactly what user took what action on the site. And the thing I love about it is that it becomes a third party, unbiased claim as to who made what change. And I think
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I think you mentioned earlier that customers were blaming Bluehost. I don't think that's rare. I think that's quite common that they'll blame they have no recollection in their head that they could be at blame either directly or passively. So who's going to take the hit? It's not going to be them. And so
Right.
whether it's the hosting company or the agency, they're going to point fingers. And I think the agency's kind of left with well, it wasn't us. We know it wasn't us. How do we prove that? Well, an activity log can actually be quite helpful because then you can just send along the activity that actually occurred,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's something that went maliciously or just an accident that happened. And I kind of think about security a little bit more than just purely um, the fact that something was injected or hacked, but also just like the integrity of your website and whether or not like the content's moving around or you deleted something by accident or whatever. It's obviously a different layer of security, but it's still an important one. I think having that activity log can be really good at making it so that those agencies don't feel like the fingers are being pointed at them. They can actually diffuse the problem quite nicely.
Right.
So that's another tool that people can use in the communication with these customers and these clients. I think.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
yeah,
Jetpack has some great features. Some people say it's outdated, it's whatever. But I mean, if you look at the features that they have, it's a great tool. Because yeah, like I
yeah,
said, and for forensics of any type, like you said, somebody changed something. Who did it? When did it happen? What do we do?
right.
You've got those answers
And
with the activity log.
and to be completely biased, like I think that Jetpack is also great in the sense that so many of its features are completely free too. So, you have that brute force protection service, you have the ability to track other things that are happening, you have vulnerability detection that's all free.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's an opportunity to try and bring it to those customers in a way that makes it accessible, so that it's not like money isn't a problem there.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So, you know, we got connected on AI. I kind of want to pivot to that. We may not have enough time to finish in this episode. We might go on to another one, but you and I connected because you were talking about ways in which AI could help with identifying vulnerabilities in plugins. Let me pause there and just let me ask you this: how's that going? What is it that you're working on?
I'm hoping to have it done by next Wednesday for PressConf. We're going out there. I'm going out there, um, and it's you think of AI as this all-knowing being, the guy behind the curtain in Wizard of Oz, um, and my first thought was, well, you just you know upload all the upload an entire plugin to Claude and tell it to find vulnerabilities. It's not quite that. It's not quite that smart or automated. But so what we did um, is that most of the programming that we do within our organization is all in Python. So we wrote a bunch of Python code that will trace like authentication um, and tainting, all sorts of aspects, and it'll trace it through, and then only if it finds something that meets a certain threshold will it involve an AI model. And we typically use Claude, although we've got some other ones embedded as well. So it'll send it off to the AI model for further analysis. And it's amazing because like straight, programming logic, in Python, um, it can find things that are suspicious, but when you submit it to AI and it comes back and says, no, because this, and this, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now I can see it. Because it's funny, when we first started working with this, one of the guys on my staff um, actually submitted, he thought for sure it was a vulnerability. I don't remember what plugin it was. So, bam, he fires up WordFence and submits it, and like within 15 minutes, I replied back, no, and you only get two or three more tries before we, you know, put a lock on your account. We don't have all day to be chasing rainbows and stuff. But and sure enough, once we involved the AI to actually analyze that section of code with the information that our Python program was able to supply it came back and said, no, this isn't, you know, this, you need admin access, and even then you need this and that. And so, the stars have to be in alignment, and, have to be the first Tuesday of the month. And then you might have a vulnerability there. But
So
But
it's been far more effective in actually identifying true vulnerabilities over false positives.
yes, yeah. The other part that we built into it, and I've never developed a plugin, so this was just one of those things. Um, Talking to people in different groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, they're like, I submitted a plugin to WordPress, and I still haven't heard back. It's been 3 weeks, it's been 4 weeks, it's been this, that, whatever. And I was like, you know what, I said, I'm an automation guy, so I'm like, there's got to be a way to automate this. So first thing we did was download the guidelines that WordPress provides for plugins. And like, okay, because we see a lot of plugins and a lot of them don't meet those guidelines. So like, okay, first
Sure.
thing we're going to do, build into our plugin analysis is, does it meet the guidelines? And then we'll start hitting it for vulnerabilities. So, but like I said, yeah, incorporating AI into the whole vulnerability analysis part has just been huge. Um, and when you think about it, things you read, hackers are using AI to find ways to get into websites, whether it be pen testing, static code analysis, whatever. They're using AI to find ways into websites. So why can't that same AI, properly managed and utilized, defeat that? Find the vulnerabilities first. Absolutely nothing but respect for PatchStack and what it does. But when you think about it from from like an IT perspective, you're paying for a service to protect your digital assets from something that should have been taken care of before it was even implemented. So, if you had an automated process, you could have something that would scan all the plugins. And I know there's 61,000 of them. Scan them, and then help people actually patch the code. That's the other part that our system does. When it finds a vulnerability, it'll analyze the code and then produce code that will tell you, here's how you should handle that. Here's the changes you need to make in order to prevent this vulnerability from being exploited.
Yeah.
So it's
So
full circle.
you mentioned that there's 60,000 something plugins. I think the problem is that because of the nature of our end users of WordPress feeling a little bit nervous about keeping things up to date, sometimes they feel like hitting update on something might actually break something or it makes them nervous. We don't actually have just 60,000 plugins, right? We have 60,000 plugins times however many versions of those plugins exist in the wild.
Right.
And that number gets quite large. I want to continue this conversation. This is such a good conversation. I want to know more about the way in which AI is going to play a role in protecting sites, because I think we've had this long-standing kind of ethical battle with hackers, where we're trying to learn from them what they're doing to infiltrate, and then how can we use that to harden things, and so now we're using AI on both ends. How do we continue doing that? And I want to continue that conversation, but I think we need to take a pause here and come back come back next week and have another episode to continue this conversation. Tom, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love talking website security. So anytime.
That's great. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Impressive Hosting, where we uncover the core tenets of great WordPress hosting. Do you have a follow-up question for today's guest, thought or comment on anything we talked about, a future guest suggestion, a hosting horror story? What do you think makes great WordPress hosting? All your comments shape this show. Drop them on impressive.host. We also appreciate you following us on social media and subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Finally, do check out our list of open source projects that need support at impressive.host. Whether it's code, community, or cache, you can make a difference. See you next time.